Hello my darlings, welcome back to my channel. This is Reads with Lauren. I'm Lauren and thank you so much for being here. I thought I would jump on because in my last couple of videos I was talking a little bit about the HRCYED challenge, HRCYED, which is the hardest reading challenge you will ever do. The many different prompts within this that I need to tick off during my reading over the next year is going to be a lot of fun. I have to admit, I've started the year strong by going to the library and stocking up and smashing through some graphic novels. But I am hoping to not do that the whole year and get through a couple more solid books. But I thought, if you are feeling so inclined and you've decided to join on this journey, it did start back in July, but you can sort of start it at any point in time. It's just over a 12-month period. You might want some ideas, right? You might want some suggestions of books that you could use to fulfill these prompts. So I have a fairly big pile of books here and I thought we could go through them together. Some of the books that you could use to meet some of these prompts. Let's go through them. I haven't done every single prompt because there are quite a lot, but I thought that these ones are great ones to start with. First prompt that I have is to read a 500+ page book within a day. The book I've decided on for this prompt is Hard Time by Jodi Taylor. If you've been on this journey with me for a while, then you'll know that I initially started with book one of this before heading to the St. Chronicles of Mary's, knowing that that series was beforehand. Now that I've read through that whole series, I went back and I read Doing Time Again, which was book number 1, and this one has been sitting on my TBR for quite a while. It has 529 pages, and this one I feel like I could probably manage to get through in one whole day. Even though it is so big and chunky, the writing is quite big, and I don't know, I get so absorbed in Jodi Taylor's writing, so I feel like this is something I'll be able to achieve. However, there is another book that I am considering as a backup in case I don't manage to finish it in one day, and that is The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This one I have heard so many good things about. This is set in 1945 and it is a love story as well as a literary thriller, and I can't wait to sink my teeth into this one. This is one that's been on my radar for a long time and I've heard so many good things about it, so I'm looking forward to giving this one a go, and it's my backup plan if I don't manage Hard Time in a full day. Now, some books that I have read that I would highly recommend, because I literally could not put it down, is 11/22/63 by Stephen King. So if I could reread this for the challenge, I feel like I could smash this out in one day. I read this over Christmas and I could not put it down. I just absolutely adored it. It's quite easily one of my favorite Stephen King books. I haven't read a huge amount of them, but the ones that I have read, it skyrockets above all of those. If you feel like making life difficult for yourself, then you could venture into Brandon Sanderson and potentially start his Stormlight Archive series. Now, this one is over 500 pages, but it is actually part 1 of 2 of the books. So this publication has separated into 2 different books. So you don't have to read the whole over 1,000 pages because that would be insane. And I would be very impressed if you managed that in one day. But if you feel like a little bit of a deep dive into some epic high fantasy, you could probably polish at least this bit off in one day. And I think it technically counts because it is one book, technically. And another suggestion, if you are into Cassandra Clare, I'm a huge fan of the Shadowhunter books, as you can see, there's quite a few here. However, I really found that my favorite was the Infernal Devices series, but this one is the first book of The Last Hours, which actually takes place after the Infernal Devices series, and this is their children. So this one is actually really good. I loved the first book. I was a little bit disappointed with the way that the series ended, but I think that if you're looking for something that is an easy read, that you might be able to get done in a day, that is over 500 pages, this is also another one that I would highly recommend. Another prompt within this challenge is to start and finish a series with more than 4 books within the year. This shouldn't be as difficult as it is, but I really struggle to read series without taking breaks in between books. However, here are some books that I would highly recommend that I have already read, but I think that if you haven't already read them, you should definitely venture into them, especially if you like cozy sci-fi or cozy fantasy. Like if you're a fan of Legends and Lattes, highly recommend the Wayfarer series by Becky Chambers, which starts with The Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet. This is just divine. I loved it. I ate this up. I love this series. They weren't all as strong as this first one, but they're so cozy and they're so much fun. And I really think that, you know, it would be a really enjoyable way to meet this prompt in the challenge. Another one that I recommend, and this is a little bit of an old school series, but it's one that I read and loved as a teenager, and when I reread it a couple of years back, it still sat just so high on my favorites list, and that is the Vampire Academy series by HRCYED. These are a lot of fun. There are more than 4 books, but they are so easy to read, and there is a spin-off series which is just as good. In fact, I think that I managed the spin-off series to finish all 4 or 5 books within a week. So it was, yeah, I highly recommend them, and I think that it's a fun way to potentially fill that prompt. A couple of series that I have started. Unfortunately, one of them I started prior to this challenge, but I will be finishing within the next 12 months, is the ACOTAR series by Sarah J. Maas. Now, if you haven't heard about these, you've obviously been living under a rock. I have spent a long time avoiding reading these books, and the first book, A Court of Thorn and Roses, is not bad. It's not bad. The end sold it for me. I found it a little bit slow at first, but 2 and 3 have really met the standard. I have 4 and 5 still to read, but I recommend them. If you haven't given them a go, that would be a great series to be able to smash out during this challenge. Another one that I have started, and I don't know if I'll finish, but I think if you're looking for something that's super funny and super ridiculous and out there, then Ice Planet Barbarians is a great option. Ice Planet Barbarians was just such a trip. It's such a ride. It's so ridiculous, but I really enjoyed it. I listened to it in audio. I think it would be interesting to see where the rest of the series goes. And if you really, really want to challenge yourself, I will go back to Brandon Sanderson and the Stormlight Archive, because there are currently 4 books out. 5th one is coming out this year, and they're so good. They're so good. I am 2 books in. I haven't read them all. However, Brandon Sanderson is one of my all-time favorite authors, and it's not because I haven't wanted to continue the series. I just, as I said before, I like to take breaks. So I highly, highly recommend it, and it might be a really challenging book series that you can finish to meet that prompt. Another prompt in this challenge is books written or set in different countries outside of Canada, US and UK. I am Australian, so I have a couple of Australian recommendations, as well as a couple from different areas that might be of interest. One that I have read and I do recommend everyone should read at some point in their life is The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. This does have some triggering moments, so definitely look up the trigger warnings, but this one is just fascinating. I really wasn't aware of the Russian invasion in the 70s into Afghanistan and the impact that it had on that. We didn't really learn much about that at school, and though I'm a history buff, I tend to lean towards the UK and the US history or Australian history. It goes over the impact that this invasion has on Amir, the lead character, as well as his loyal friend Hassan, and how that progresses and that trauma impacts on the rest of their lives. And I really enjoyed this one, so I highly recommend it. Another one that I have read and could not put down, so I recommend it if you're okay with the fact that this author does not particularly write female characters very well. He writes them with the male gaze definitely in mind. I don't like the way that he describes women, but I also really found that I could not put this one down. It is a chunky boy, but it is 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. This one was just magical realism on steroids, and I just found myself consistently like in shock and unable to put the book down and just flipping the pages so fast, because I was like, what is happening? What is going to happen? This is an insane story. But I also think you could, I mean, if you really wanted to challenge yourself, you could attempt this as a 500 plus page book in a day. But then that's probably a pretty difficult challenge. But this is a good one because it's set in Japan, so it is outside of those areas, and I recommend it. Definitely check out the trigger warnings, and if you are deeply impacted by the way that some male authors write women, then this might not be for you. I was willing to overlook it because of the story and just how insane it was. Now, a couple of Australian recommendations. This is one that I have read and I've kept on my bookshelf in the hopes that eventually my kids will want to read it, and that is Looking for Alibrandi by Melina Marchetta. This one was great. It has a movie that came out in the 90s that was really good as well. It's a great story about an Italian-Australian Catholic school student who is navigating her way through life, first love, and just the trials and tribulations of being a teenager. It's a short one and it's quite good. This one I haven't yet read, but it is on my radar, and that is Boy Swallows Universe by Trent Dalton. I love this cover. I think it is so great. And the TV show has recently been released and I would love to watch it, but I definitely want to read this one first. This is set in Brisbane in the 80s, and our main protagonist, Eli, has life pretty tough with a junkie mum and a heroin dealer for a stepfather. The story centers on Eli growing up, trying to become a good man, and the obstacles that he has to face along the way, including a jailbreak-in. So intrigued. However, for this particular challenge, I'm hoping to read this one, which I recently picked up from an op shop. Heard nothing about it, but I love the cover and it looks really intriguing, and that is The Natural Way of Things by Charlotte Wood. Look at this cover. It's just so pretty. I'm not a huge plant person, but I just really think that this is just such a striking cover. This is a dystopian tale of survival where women are drugged and kept captive in a strange house with a nurse and 2 jailers. I'm just so buzzed. I picked it up, flicked through it, and thought I need to read this very soon. So yes, hoping that this will be the one that I use for this prompt. For something outside of Australia that I also have not read yet, I've heard so many people talk about this classic, and it is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This is one I definitely want to read as well. I'm hoping to get to this as soon as possible, but there are so many books on my TBR. It's just insane. This is a Spanish classic and it's magical realism, and I can't wait to sink my teeth into it. One of the prompts that I'm so excited to complete is to complete the queer rainbow. So LGBTQIA. So a couple of recommendations for books with a lesbian main protagonist is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I loved this book. This is also magical realism. I think that, maybe I might have a little bit of fondness for this sort of genre. But this one is about a woman who meets another woman on the train, and it turns out that this woman has actually been stuck on this train since the 70s, but has not aged, has not grown, and cannot actually leave this train. Super interesting. I really loved it. Another one that I would love to read very, very soon that I haven't had a chance to do so yet is The Falling in Love montage by Kiara Smith. There is another prompt that could also work for this book, and that is reading a book within the season that you're currently in, set in that season. So, reading a book set in winter during winter, and a book in summer during summer, on and on and on. A great winter read, especially if, you experience winter over Christmas. Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrane. This is one that I really enjoyed. It was just a quick romp. It was very out there, but it's seasonal, it's Christmassy, it's winter vibes, it's great. For the prompt of a main protagonist who is gay, I highly, highly recommend. I have read this one, and it is Arthur and Teddy Are Coming Out by Ryan Love. I really enjoyed this. This was such a joy to read. It tackles coming out in your old age, and the impacts that has on your family, but also how finally being yourself and being honest and honoring your truth can be such a positive thing. Arthur is almost 80 and he comes out, and in the process of the family's reactions, how they're taking it, him finding his truth and being honest and dealing with the homophobia from the people around him. In the same age group in a small town, you can imagine there are some negative interactions, but there are also some really positive interactions. And with Arthur coming out, it kind of prompts his grandson Teddy to sort of do the same. He ends up having this relationship with someone from work, and it's a cute little romp. I loved it. I really enjoyed it, and I think that it's one that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, and I feel like it should be more known, and I'd love to see what people think of it because I loved it. And also, I am a fiend for anything with a rainbow on the cover, and look, Those clothes in the background, they just win me over. Another one that I highly recommend, I have read the book, loved it, seen the movie twice, loved it, and that's Red, White and Royal Blue, which is also by Casey McQuiston. This one is just so much fun. This is about the Prince of England falling in love with the president's son, and it is so feel good. It is so much fun. The ending is great. I love that we're getting so many more happy endings in queer romances. It's just so good. And the movie is phenomenal. So I want more people to love it as much as I do, and I want more people to watch the movie so that they can appreciate those beautiful actors as well as appreciating the person who plays the king. No spoilers, but it was a huge exciting moment for me when I discovered it. For a main protagonist who is bisexual, we have Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. This was also a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this one. One of the main protagonists in this, Claire, is bisexual, and it's an absolute delight to read. One Last Stop also qualifies because the main protagonist is bi, whereas the other main protagonist who is stuck on the train is gay. It could kind of suit either one. For the transgender community, if you haven't already, check out my Trans Awareness Week recommendations video. I went through a lot of different books. But one author that I would really recommend is Andrew Joseph White. I've only read 2, but I recommend both that I have read, and they are Hell Followed With Us and Compound Fracture. Brutal but excellent books. Queer is tricky because technically any of these books can fall under that category, but a couple that I have looked into that have a main protagonist who identifies as queer: Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. I want to get my hands on this one. Sirens, queer, horror, like, come on. Another book includes On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. This one is an intense story. Absolutely beautiful. It's so lyrical. Ocean Vuong is a poet, and so converting it over into writing a novel is just absolutely brilliant. There are some triggering moments. It does cover the Vietnam War, so yeah, definitely check out the trigger warning, but for the writing alone, I highly recommend it. Now, the I, so intersex. I realized whilst researching for this video that there aren't many that I know about. So one that's been on my radar for a really long time is Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides. I would really like to read this one, but I don't know that many. So if any of you have any recommendations of books where the main protagonist is intersex, please let me know, because I would love to read more books with main protagonists that are intersex. Then for asexual representation, one that obviously I would recommend is Loveless by Alice Oseman. This was a great book. It was my first book with a protagonist that was asexual, and really enjoyed it. It was great insight. It was, yeah, really interesting. Another one that I really want to read soon is Ace, What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society and the Meaning of Sex by Angie Chen. This doesn't necessarily have a main protagonist that is asexual, but it is a book that's been on my radar for a while that goes into asexuality and what that means, and I'm very intrigued. So hopefully that will be the one that I read to tick off this prompt in the challenge. So these are just some of the books that I think would be really awesome to tick off during this HRCYED challenge. If you're not doing the challenge, I do hope that you still got some recommendations out of this one. One of the prompts is actually recommendations from a smaller YouTuber, and I am still quite small, so any of these books could tick off that prompt as well. If you have any recommendations for any of these prompts, please put them in the comments below. I'd love to get some more recommendations. I mean, my TBR is absolutely out of control, but I always have room to add more. So subscribe if you're new, give the video a like if you enjoyed it, comment down below any books that you would recommend or any books that you have enjoyed that could fill out these prompts. But until the next video, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to chatting to you again very soon. Goodbye, my darlings.